My Friend Hasn't Been the Same Since His Camping Trip by Blackwings 16. I write this in my locked room in a very scared and confused state. I don't think he, or it, is still out there. I didn't really know where else to go with this horror, so I'm looking for some advice and your help. Let me explain the events of my night. One of my best friends, who I will be calling B for privacy reasons, had just come back from a month-long hiking trip out in the vast wilderness of Utah. This was the first time me and my girlfriend, T, had seen him since he left, so we were very excited. He hadn't had any contact with anyone while he was gone, so there was a lot of catching up to do. T and I were both invited to B's girlfriend's house for a fire, just to hang out and hear all about his trip. Upon arrival, I noticed something was off about B. As we sat around the fire telling him various things that had happened in his absence, I noticed he wouldn't make eye contact with us. He kept just staring into the fire as if it were a TV. At one point, I asked him if he was okay, and he sort of twitched his whole body and stared at me. He didn't answer my question and just kept staring. He went from inattentively staring into the fire to looking at me with such a studying look that it looked almost sinister. I hadn't noticed that for the entirety of the night we had all been sitting by the fire. B's chair was about 5 feet further back from it. "Aren't you getting a little cold or bitten by bugs?" I asked. He was still staring at me, and it wasn't until his girlfriend nudged him on the shoulder when he finally broke eye contact. What?" he asked, confused. "Are you okay, man? You've kind of been off a little all night. I'm guessing you're probably just tired from not being able to sleep in an actual bed for over a month," I said. He smirked and let out a chuckle, which calmed my nerves due to how odd he had been acting. "You're probably right. It's just been a long day, getting back into the rhythm of things and such," he stated. "No worries, bud. We are probably gonna take off anyways, and I'll let you get some rest," I told him. T and I stood up, hugged both of them goodbye, and made our way around the house. B's girlfriend's house was surrounded by a small wooded area, so as we walked through it, I decided to scare T. We had recently been listening to some scary stories, and I could tell that she was on edge due to them. All it took for me to get a scream out of her was simply just screaming and grabbing her. She gave me a light hit on the chest and responded with, "You're an asshole." Immediately after her words, we heard fast crunches of leaves close to us, as if something was running fast. T got freaked out, and I assured her it was probably a deer, and we finally made our way back to the car. We hopped in, and I quickly drove her home. As I pulled out of her brick driveway, my car rattled from the bumpy ground beneath. I had had a set of golf clubs in the back for about 2 months, so I was used to the metallic thud noises that followed a bump in the road. However, what I wasn't used to was the quiet yet distinct breathing I heard from my trunk. It sounded almost animal-like, as if something was wounded and laying in my trunk. I wrote it off as just my head playing tricks on me from all the scary stories me and T have been listening to. I soon arrived in my driveway. It was incredibly long and surrounded by a good amount of woods, so the drive up can be eerie at times. This was one of those times. As I kept driving up the driveway, I received a text from B's girlfriend. I quickly hit the brakes due to the vast amount of light my phone was creating, which blinded me from seeing where I was driving. The text read, "Hey, thanks so much for driving B home. He seemed really tired." I stared at my phone confused. Why did she think I drove him home? I assumed he was going to hang out with her more, given that they haven't been together in over a month. My thoughts were interrupted by a demonic-sounding growl coming from the back of my car. I looked up to see into my rearview mirror, and I saw the silhouette of a very thin, humanoid figure. I turned around quickly to get a better look and was greeted with horror. It was B, but it wasn't. I recognized whatever this hellish creature was as B due to an iconic birthmark B has on his upper forehead that resembles a pair of wings. Yet, there was no way this thing could be him. It had no hair. It had pale, almost bleach white skin, and its face will forever be burned into my mind for as long as I live. The eyes They were blood red, no pupils, almost glowing in a way. The ears were jagged, as if they had been chewed on by a dog. The lips looked as if they were torn off at certain points and were replaced with gray, unnatural scar tissue. But the worst part was the teeth. Each was about an inch long and needle-like, stained with red spots and small pieces of what I assumed to be flesh hanging off of them. It seemed like an eternity as we both stared into each other's souls. However, in an unnatural and truly impossible motion, it leaped from the back seat and out through the open sunroof of the car. It jumped down next to my car and stood for only a moment. I then noticed it had impossibly long arms that reached almost down to its ankles, and that its knees were bent in the opposite direction than a normal human's. It stood as if it wanted me to take in the terror that was its body. But it wasn't long before it took off sprinting at an ungodly speed into the woods. I have since locked every door and window and shut every blind in my house. It has been hours since my encounter with that thing, and I'm still scared. I know that sleep is the last thing that will be happening to me tonight. Can someone, anyone, please give me some insight as to what happened to my friend? That birthmark is basically a trademark stamp of bees. I know it when I see it. So please, any help would be great. I'll post an update if anything else happens.